Folks, buckle up, because the US economy is careening down a cliff, and guess who's steering the clown car? That's right, it's your friendly neighborhood tariff warrior, Donald J. Trump, back for round 2 of economic chaos. Here at Boss Economics World, we're not just here to sip lattes and crunch numbers, we're here to call out the government's epic mismanagement, roast the policies dragging us into recession purgatory, and shine a spotlight on the economic dumpster fire that's threatening to burn down a century of American financial dominance. So, grab your popcorn, because this is gonna be a wild ride. Ladies and gentlemen, 2 months into Trump's second term, and the US economy is already looking like a bad reboot of a disaster movie. The dollar? Shaky. Treasury bonds? Wobbling. Consumer confidence? In the toilet. And the Federal Reserve? Oh, it's under siege, with Trump threatening to fire Jerome Powell faster than you can say, central bank independence. Meanwhile, his genius tariff war is blowing up global trade like a kid with a firecracker in a china shop. Now, look, we've been warning you here at Boss Economics World about government mismanagement for years, but this? This is a masterclass in economic self-sabotage. Trump's team claims they're fixing the system, sticking it to freeloading allies, bringing back jobs, and making America great again. But what they're really doing is torching the foundations of US financial hegemony, alienating allies, spooking investors, and setting the stage for a recession that could make the great financial crisis look like a picnic. Today, we're diving deep into the economic carnage, peeling back the layers of this policy train wreck, and showing you how the government's reckless mismanagement is dragging us all into the abyss. Spoiler alert, it's bad, folks. Really bad. But don't take my word for it, let's look at the data, the markets, and the cold, hard facts. Let's start with the centerpiece of Trump's economic strategy, tariffs. Oh, tariffs, the magical cure-all for everything from trade deficits to bad hair days. Trump rolled into the White House Rose Garden on April 2, 2025, waving a chart of tariff hikes like it was the Declaration of Independence, slapping levies on everyone from Canada to China. His logic? Other countries are freeloading off America's generosity, and it's time to make them pay. Sounds tough, right? Sounds like a plan to bring back jobs and stick it to the globalists, right? Wrong. Here's the reality, folks, tariffs are a tax on your wallet, a sledgehammer to global trade, and a one-way ticket to economic isolation. The U.S. Chamber of Commerce estimated in 2024 that Trump's first-term tariffs cost American consumers $40 billion annually in higher prices. Now, with his 2025 tariff blitz, economists at the Peterson Institute for International Economics project that U.S. consumer prices could spike by an additional 5% over the next year, wiping out $500 billion in purchasing power. That's $500 billion sucked out of your pockets, folks, all because Tariff Man thinks he's playing 4D chess. And it's not just consumers getting burned. Businesses are getting crushed, too. The S&P 500 has nosedived nearly 10% since April 2, 2025, vaporizing $4.8 trillion in market value. Why? Because tariffs jack up the cost of inputs, disrupt supply chains, and invite retaliation. Just look at the auto industry. Ford and GM stocks are down 15% this month alone, thanks to higher steel and aluminum costs and the threat of European and Chinese counter-tariffs. Meanwhile, the National Association of Manufacturers reports that 70% of its members are scaling back investment plans due to tariff uncertainty. Jobs? Forget it. The Tax Foundation estimates that Trump's new tariffs could kill 825,000 U.S. jobs by 2026. But hey, maybe the government knows something we don't, right? Maybe this is all part of a brilliant plan to fix the trade deficit. Nope. The U.S. trade deficit hit $1.1 trillion in 2024, the highest in a decade, and economists at Goldman Sachs predict Trump's tariffs will widen it further by disrupting export markets. So, congratulations, Mr. President, you've managed to tank growth, hammer consumers, and make the trade deficit worse, all while alienating allies. Bravo. Now, let's talk about the crown jewels of American financial dominance, the U.S. dollar and Treasury bonds. For decades, these have been the ultimate safe havens, where investors run when the world gets scary. But guess what? Thanks to Trump's tariff tantrums and Fed bashing, they're starting to look like toxic waste. The Bloomberg Dollar Spot Index is down over 7% in 2025, its worst start since the index launched in 2005. Why? Because investors are freaking out about Trump's attacks on the Federal Reserve. Just this month, Trump escalated his war of words, demanding immediate rate cuts and threatening to fire Jerome Powell. Now, let's be clear, the Fed's independence is sacred. It's why investors trust U.S. markets. It's why the dollar is involved in 90% of global forex trades and accounts for 60% of central bank reserves, according to the Bank for International Settlements. But when the president starts treating the Fed like his personal piggy bank, that trust evaporates. Barclays strategists nailed it in their April 21, 2025, note, the live prospect of reduced Fed independence unlocks dollar risks too large to ignore. And it's not just the dollar. Treasury bonds, the bedrock of global finance, are getting slaughtered. Yields on 10-year Treasuries spiked to 4.6% this month, the biggest weekly surge in over 2 decades, before easing slightly after Trump dialed back some tariffs. But here's the kicker, normally, when stocks tank, Treasuries rally as investors seek safety. Not this time. Treasuries and the dollar are both getting dumped, a sign that investors are losing faith in U.S. assets altogether. Why does this matter? Because the U.S. relies on foreign investors to finance its $29 trillion national debt and $1.9 trillion budget deficit, according to the Congressional Budget Office's 2025 projections. Foreigners own $7 trillion in treasuries, $19 trillion in U.S. equities, and $5 trillion in corporate bonds, per Apollo Management's Torsten Slok. If they start unloading those holdings, we're talking about a financial crisis on steroids. Just look at Japan and China, which together hold over $2 trillion in treasuries. Rumors are swirling, without hard data yet, that they're quietly selling off. If that's true, folks, we're in for a world of hurt. But wait, there's more. Trump's not just tanking the economy at home, he's blowing up America's geopolitical standing, too. For decades, the U.S. has been the linchpin of global security and trade, using its military might and financial dominance to keep allies in line. But now, Trump's "America First" mantra is turning into "America Alone." Take Europe. Trump's tariff war is driving a wedge between the U.S. and its NATO allies, who are already furious about his push for a Ukraine-Russia peace deal that accommodates Moscow. European leaders are now cozying up to China, with Germany and France ramping up trade talks with Beijing, according to a Reuters report from April 20, 2025. Why? Because they'd rather deal with Xi Jinping than navigate Trump's erratic trade policies. In Asia, it's the same story. Singapore's Prime Minister Lawrence Wong declared on April 10, 2025, that the era of rules-based globalization and free trade is over. Countries like Japan and South Korea, long reliant on U.S. security, are now hedging their bets, deepening ties with China to avoid getting caught in the U.S.-China trade crossfire. And here's the real kicker, Trump's team is hinting that access to the dollar and treasuries, aka the lifeblood of global finance, might come with strings attached. White House economist Stephen Miron argued in an April 2025 post that allies need to pay their fair share for U.S. protection. Translation, cough up cash, or we'll cut you off from the dollar system. This isn't just economic policy, folks, it's financial blackmail. And it's pushing the world to look for alternatives, like the euro or even China's yuan, which, while not ready to dethrone the dollar, is gaining ground in global trade, with its share of cross-border payments rising to 4.6% in 2024, per SWIFT data. Now, let's zoom out and look at the bigger picture, the U.S. government's chronic mismanagement. Trump's team is promising tax cuts and deregulation to juice growth, but here's the problem, the U.S. is already drowning in debt. The national debt held by the public is $29 trillion, with a net international investment position, a measure of what the U.S. owes the world, of $26 trillion, according to the US Treasury's 2024 data. Budget deficits are projected to hit $1.9 trillion in fiscal 2025, per the CBO. And what's the plan to pay for all this? More borrowing, of course. But here's the rub, if foreign investors lose confidence in U.S. assets, borrowing costs will skyrocket. Just look at the 10-year Treasury yield, which has already spiked to 4.6%. Higher yields mean higher mortgage rates, higher corporate borrowing costs, and a slower economy. Oh, and don't forget the looming debt ceiling fight, which could rattle markets even further. But hey, maybe Trump's team has a secret plan, right? Nope. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent went on Bloomberg TV in April 2025, telling everyone to hang tight for the full effect of Trump's agenda. Translation, we have no idea what we're doing, but please don't panic. This, folks, is what happens when you let a reality TV star run a $26 trillion economy. So, where does this leave us? In a word, screwed. Trump's tariff war is killing trade, his Fed bashing is tanking the dollar and treasuries, and his "America First" geopolitics is isolating the U.S. on the world stage. Consumer confidence is in the gutter, businesses are slashing investment, and markets are in freefall. The IMF spring meetings in Washington this week, April 21, 27, 2025, are shaping up to be a global therapy session, with finance ministers scrambling to figure out how to survive the Trumpocalypse. Here at Boss Economics World, we've been warning you about government mismanagement for years, but this is next-level incompetence. The U.S. economy is teetering on the edge of a recession, and the data backs it up. The Conference Board's leading economic index has been declining for 6 straight months, and Goldman Sachs now puts the odds of a 2025 recession at 65%. But hey, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe Trump's tariffs will magically bring back millions of jobs, the dollar will rebound, and the world will beg to buy our treasuries again. Or maybe, just maybe, the government's reckless policies will drag us into an economic abyss, leaving ordinary Americans to pick up the pieces. So, what can you do? Stay informed, stay skeptical, and keep watching Boss Economics World, where we'll keep calling out the clowns in Washington and giving you the real story behind the economic headlines. Until next time, folks, keep your wallets close and your tariffs closer, because in Trump's America, you're gonna need both. This is Boss Economics World, signing off. Remember, the government's incompetence is your recession. See you next week.